Initial broadcast from FEECon in Atlanta, and I'm Brian Hyde for Loving Liberty. I'm here with Bill Norton, and before I introduce you to who Bill is and what Bill is doing, I want to just kind of give you a little bit of a glimpse of FEECon is put on by the Foundation for Economic Education, and there are a ton of young people, I mean hundreds of young people here, college students and the like, and we're all gathered here centered around the idea that freedom is a good thing. And more of it would be a good thing. And there are better ways that we could exercise that. So in interest of teaching young people the principles of freedom, I have Bill Norton here with me. And Bill, I'm going to have you explain which organization are you with?
Well, with a number of different organizations. Here I'm with Freedom Factor and with Loving Liberty. But I also work with the National Center for Constitutional Studies, the Center for Self-Governance, and I work for a university out of Omaha, Nebraska called Bellevue University. So lots of hats.
Okay, and I think that's really not uncommon. I actually find a lot of people who are very active on the freedom front who wear a number of hats. One of the hats in particular that we want to talk about that you're wearing is helping to get young people, to help young people get their minds around the concept of liberty. And you were explaining to me before we sat down for this interview that there is a marvelous program that can take history out of the abstract and help put kids right in the middle of it as it pertains to self-governance. What can you tell us about this program?
So the program's actually with Bellevue University, and it's a program that we're calling Self-Government Works. And we've got a pilot program this year where we're putting it into a number of different schools, some private, some public, a handful of classrooms that are going to pilot it for us, and then we'll be ready to roll out the final product for the 2019-2020 school year. But basically what it is, what Self-Government Works is it's a self-government classroom simulation. So what it does is most simulations out there in relation to civics and things simulate our existing system. So for example, they'll have a legislative simulation or an election simulation or something like that, which those are all fantastic to teach our current system. But it doesn't really teach self-government or liberty or the ideas of freedom. All it does is just kind of show them how our existing system works. So what we've developed with Self-Government Works is a simulation in which the students actually develop and see the evolution of self-government in their own classroom. And what it does is it parallels American history. So the cool thing is the kids are learning how history now relates directly to them. So for example, they first start out by learning about the divine right of kings and this concept of how others are naturally born to govern others. And of course, then on the contrary, they're learning that John Locke and others talking about individual rights that are unalienable. And so what happens in this simulation is initially the students are under what we call teacher's rules. And the teacher's rules initially are pretty common, don't talk out of turn and things like that. Well, then the teacher's rules fairly quickly become much more oppressive and become actually quite ridiculous. And so then the students are given the opportunity to decide to leave teacher's rules and to embark on self-governance themselves. And as they're doing this in their own classroom, they're learning about English history with Divine Right of Kings, and they're learning about the Mayflower Compact and things. And then speaking of like the Mayflower Compact, we use historic documents as historical benchmarks in the development or evolution of self-government. So then they can use those documents as models to then create some of their own documents. Now their documents don't have to look or feel just like those historic documents, but they can act as kind of a guideline for them.
Now, I'm curious, it sounds like, in a private school setting, I can see where this would go over really, really well. Is this something that will also be catching on or is catching on within a public school setting?
Absolutely. We have a school district in the Omaha area that's going to be piloting it as well. And they very excited about bringing it into public schools. So some of our piloting schools are private, some are combination public-private, some are religiously private, and then others are these public schools. So it's designed to be very customizable for the grade level and for the school, and so it's awesome. But by the time the students are done with it, they've developed their own forms of government that they actually operate in the classroom. They're given certain challenges that they have to fulfill. Those challenges or assignments using their system of government, so they get to determine whether or not their government's working. And then most importantly, by the end, they learn how to troubleshoot their system and how to solve problems and maintain their system. Maintenance is the most difficult thing with governance, and we're certainly learning that in our country today, that it's pretty difficult to maintain this republic that the founders created.
You mentioned that your daughter had a very positive experience with this system and going through one of these simulations, and actually came away with kind of an affinity for John Locke. That's not something you're going to hear a lot of young people talking about. I really like John Locke. Why did she find this affinity?
So it was just such a fun thing as a father. I'd be sitting at my home office, and my daughter would come running down the hallway with her documents book, which is a booklet of primary source documents that each student gets as part of the simulation. But she'd come running down the hallway, and she said, "Oh, Daddy, you got to read this. John Locke is incredible." And she'd have some quote from John Locke. So she thought John Locke was awesome, not because she loved 18th century literature. She explains that the reason why she became fond of John Locke was because when they were in their class in the simulation, they had some very specific challenges in self-governance, and John Locke had specific solutions. And so that's what she was excited about, was here's the answers. We've got the answers right here. And so that's why she loves him, is because not because she thinks that the old stuffy guys are cool, but because they have real solutions, real ideas.
That's such a powerful example of how wisdom differs from knowledge, in the sense that, knowledge is good and it can help us through our day-to-day stuff, but it can become obsolete at some point. There's a reason we don't use leeches to treat people medically, or at least, it's not common to bleed somebody when they have a fever. Wisdom, on the other hand, which John Locke apparently supplied in large amounts, endures the test of time. It's as true today as it was in his time, and your daughter and those who were participating with her sound like they were better off for having discovered that.
Oh, absolutely. And the other thing that she was able to really discover with those historic documents and her own experience was she really started understanding human nature and how human nature interacted with government. She shares her own story about how when she was elected as the chairman of their classroom, how she felt the tug of wanting more control and taking over more control of the classroom, and how she was fighting others that were trying to take over control. And so she was really able to understand the nuances of human nature and how that makes self-governance quite difficult.
Okay, I'm talking with Bill Norton, and Bill, I'm going to ask you, for the sake of our viewers, to share again the name of the program and where can they go online if they want to learn more about this or maybe even participate in it.
So the name of the program is Self-Government Works, and it's a in-classroom simulation that models the evolution of self-government using American history kind of as the drive or the vehicle for it. And right now, there's actually not a place to even go learn much about it, because we're in our pilot program where we have a handful of schools that are piloting it. And then come next year, we'll be basically unveiling it to the public so that other schools can then use it far and wide.
I'm going to throw a shameless plug in then for Loving Liberty and say we're close to Bill. Bill is close to us. As this program comes out and continues to develop, follow on Loving Liberty, and we will make sure that we will help you get the word out so that people can access it.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Brian.
Okay, thanks so much. We'll be back with more interviews from FEECon in just a little bit.